Good evening. Welcome to the
know it wasn't
March 21st, aka the March 14th Board of Ed meeting. Stella postponed us by a week. So tonight we are going to have the presentation on the proposed budget. So I think we will get started with that. And do you want to do any announcements? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to do a couple of slides first, if that's okay.
Sure.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Before I get into the slides, I just have two other things I want to mention to the board that I don't have a slide for. One is I want to congratulate Jeremy Luft. He received his doctorate this past week, and I want to well done. And I also want to give a quick shout out to our building and grounds guys for the outstanding work they did in clearing our buildings from the storm. They really worked nonstop for quite a few hours, really clearing us out and getting everything ready. I was in constant contact with Joe and Moderano, and the guys were tired, I know, but they really did an outstanding job, and I'd like to just acknowledge them on behalf of all of us in getting our schools cleared and ready. And towards that end, I received a letter that I'd like to share with the board, if you don't mind. It's addressed to me, and it says, we have lived on the corner of School Street and Mount Hope Boulevard for the past 19 years. While living next to the school can present some challenges, for example, traffic in the morning and afternoon, trash left behind, there can also be some positives as well. On Tuesday, March 14, the day of the blizzard, we were struggling to shovel out our driveway and sidewalks, which was made more difficult by the village snowplows depositing extra snow as we worked. In the middle of doing this, a truck driven by school district maintenance custodial staff stopped near us. They told us to stop, that they would help us out by using their snowblower to help clear the entrance to our driveway. Indeed, later they did this. This is not the first time they have helped us. There have been other times when they have taken a moment or two to help us clear an opening in the snow. There have also been times when they have picked up trash from our property when it was obvious that students left trash behind. As homeowners living near the school, we have tried to be good neighbors by trimming our hedges and keeping the sidewalks clear so the students can get to school safely. The fact that your staff have been good neighbors to us as well makes this easier. In case you did not already know, we wanted you to know the good work of your custodial maintenance staff. Please let them know that your neighbors are appreciative. So, and just on a sad note, as you all know, we lost a very valuable and involved community member, Ms. Norbert Sander, passed away suddenly. It was quite a shock to all of us, and I'd just like to send our condolences and wishes to Norb's family on behalf of the entire school district, and perhaps it's appropriate to just have a quick moment of silence on behalf of Mr. Sander. Thank you. Okay. All right, so I'll get into a few of the slides to share with you. First, we had the town supervisor, Mr. Feiner, visiting Hillside and talked with the children about what it means to be a citizen activist. He honored one of our second graders, created a public service announcement to persuade the town to repave parts of Jackson Avenue last year. And so it was a nice visit, and kids had a good time with Mr. Feiner. We had the African American Inventors exhibit that you've heard quite a bit about. Thanks to Lisa and the PTSA for sponsoring that and bringing that to us. You know, we still get a lot of compliments on that. People are just still amazed about all the inventions that are up there and things that certainly I never knew about that other people didn't know either. So it was really a nice thing, and I hope other schools take advantage of it as well, because it was really tremendous. So thank you.
And Roy, I'll just add, it's open currently right now if anybody in the audience wants to go walk through it. And I think it'll probably be up, and I just have to work with our school people, probably this week. We're on vacation the following week, and then probably that last week will probably be the last one.
Great. We had our academic A team victorious at the Omar tournament. So congratulations to these students. They won 6 out of 7 rounds in the A division, and went to the finals and placed 4th out of 32 teams, which is quite an achievement. And we had one of our students, Joel Gardner, recognized as the 3rd top individual scorer of the entire tournament. So congratulations to Joel and the rest of the team on a great showing. And I'm not going to read all the awards that are on here, but I wanted to share with you that our Hastings Science Research Team, the research group, won various awards from the Westchester Engineering and Science Fair. And congratulations to our students and to Melissa Chandra for facilitating that for us.
Who's on the back on the academic challenge? Is that Ms. Pataki?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Okay. And just a reminder, we will be having another board meeting next week. In case you didn't get enough this week, you can all come back next week and join us again. And I believe we are going to have a hearing. I'm not sure if we're going to have one.
Yeah, we have to figure out, so we don't crash into other agendas, but
Right.
or other meeting times. It may start, we'll have to figure it out, but we will post something on the website to let people know about the hearing.
There was another sort of phenomenal evening at the school with the culture shock.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of Fridays. Lisa and I were there, and it was just really, really interesting to see this student-led Teresa Puthadami.
With the Amadon.
Thank you. Put this together, I guess, last year and did it
Yes.
again this year. And just the acts were amazing, and just the breadth of...
What was it?
It was all different sort of dances and performances from all around the
Different
world.
cultures.
I think the idea was that let's find the diversity that we currently have and celebrate it. And it really was wonderful to see a child celebrating her background with children who are not of her background all doing a particular dance together. And it was joyous.
Yeah, I'd like to also mention we had a great sixth grade musical as well over this past weekend. Despite the snow and 2 days of not rehearsing, they did a tremendous job, so congratulations.
Singing in the rain.
Yes, singing in the snow. Indeed.
Okay. All right,
New York
so
City schools do that.
next thing is you.
Budget.
Budget.
Okay.
Do that.
So
They don't call it culture shock.
I'd like to present the proposed budget to the board and public, talk about some of the things that are in there. I know you all have budget books in front of you that contains all the detail parts of the budget, and there are copies available for the public as well. If you haven't gotten one, I believe they're outside. That explains a lot about the various categories, what's included, and a lot of the backup for the various lines that go into each category. So what I thought I'd do is go through the highlights, summaries, and the categories, and then if anybody on the board has a specific question about a category based on the detailed budget book, please ask, and we'll try to provide our best answer for you. Okay? Just our budget calendar that we do show. Obviously, it's a little off, just
Stella!
correct.
Please, snow.
But every year we do go into the budget with specific goals in mind, where we try to maintain the quality of education that we expect, our community expects of us. We do try to keep our budget within the state tax levy cap as best we can. And we have to be mindful of the building an affordable and sustainable organization. I know Maureen has prepared, as she has each year, a 5-year projection of spending and revenue, and I know that you've all looked at it, and as you can see, it's not, if you look out 3 to 5 years, there is a pretty big gap between expenditures and revenues. That is something we'll have to consider moving forward. So we do add things to a budget. We have to be mindful of the successive years, and can we continue to afford on a regular basis versus one-time expenses where you might be able to buy something and don't have that ongoing expense for future years. So just something to keep in mind as we go through that. First, I want to start with the cap itself and our tax cap calculation for this year's budget. As we had mentioned previously, it was a large growth year for the town of Hastings, which upped our ability to go to a 2.58% tax cap, or the equivalent of raising tax revenue by an additional $980,000. You'll see in the budget that we did not go as high as the cap. We're about $350,000 below the cap in this proposed budget. But just to give you a sense of where we are at and where we would be able to be at, this is the calculation that provides that information. So here's a general summary look at the budget. So you have the appropriations, which are the four main categories that include the general support, and we'll break these down on future slides. Instruction, transportation, and the benefits, which is the undistributed part. And you can see for the most part, it's a pretty even budget going into next year, except for the area of instruction, which is increasing by 5.2%, and that is a result of increasing staff members that we've recommended in this budget to take care of class size issues that we have going on. So that's where that increase comes from. A percent budget change, we're at about 2.86% overall. And a quick look at the revenues. We have an increase in the state aid of $570,000, again, primarily due to building-based aid, not foundation aid. And then you can see the other revenue where it's coming from. Miscellaneous receipts are down a little bit, projected to be down a little bit. We've allocated fund balance, or appropriated balance, into next year's budget, but it's down from the current budget by $270,000. Retirement reserve, we're increasing by $375,000. And tax reserve for tax, we're increasing by $150,000. In the line that you'd be interested in, property taxes would be increasing by 1.65%, or raising an additional $629,000 of taxes should this budget be approved. Again, the tax cap number we were allowed to go up to was $980,000. We're recommending an increase of $629,000. If you look at where the money is spent primarily in our budget, as you would expect, because we are a people organization, it's primarily spent on salaries, 55%, benefits, 23%, tuition, debt service, and you can see the rest of them, which are a lot less, but primarily we spend our money on instruction, salaries, and benefits. What I want to do next is go through the program proposals as we are recommending in this budget before we break it down into the different categories. Okay? So in this budget, and the numbers that we show are reflective of this currently. We are increasing at Hillside School, recommending somewhere between 1 to 2 sections of increases. An increase of 0.7 in the makerspace STEM areas. Currently it's a 0.3 position. We're going to make that a full-time position to work in the makerspace and to help our teachers in the area of science education. We're recommending a 0.2 guidance or social worker to help coordinate and run the SEL program at Hillside School. The ELA program, as we discussed previously, we did have a needs assessment done. We just got that report back, so I don't have that ready for you tonight. We will have it ready for you to review and summarize. And we're breaking down the cost. Right now we just have an overview proposal, but I need to break down the cost into professional development, how much time, what we're looking at, coaching hours, things like that. So we'll break that down as part of that summary.
Is the idea with this current $60,000 allocation that we're going to look at the report by Gravity Goldberg and then see if $60,000 is the right number, if that's where we want to go, if we're better off, looking for other avenues in which to effectuate raising our ELA?
Well, yes. So we had her come in to do the needs assessment, and I just did a cursory review of the report, and you can see in the report that there are various needs that jumped out. Articulation, some curriculum work. Teachers are asking for additional professional development in specific areas. So that's going to translate into what a recommendation from this consultant would be to do some summer work in development curriculum units, some work on specific professional development areas for our teachers, and then some coaching throughout the year. So we'll break that down into a cost and see what that is. I believe, Amy's in the audience too, but I believe their recommendation is to use this consultant for the work, but I just need to break down the cost and what's going to be curriculum development, what do we pay our teachers to write it, how much is going to be coaching for next year, things like that, so you can get an overall look at that.
Okay, great.
We have a $10,500 recommendation to increase library books and supplies. increase our nonfiction books specifically, and also for the social emotional learning program being recommended for Hillside as well. I know they did come up with a program that they want to use, Second Step, and I believe this money is the right amount for that program, and the PD that goes with that. At the Farragut Middle School, we need to increase the 5th grade section. Currently, there are 6 sections in 4th grade. We only have 5 in 5th grade, so to maintain those class sizes, we have to increase that section. And then there are, again, bits and pieces of various sections that the schedules are not totally done yet, so I can't tell you with 100% degree of certainty whether that .1 here and .1 there will be needed, but we do need to have money allocated in the budget just in the event they are needed. Those are additional sections because of class size issues. You did hear from Gail last board meeting about the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, to be involved in that program. The middle school RTI program is something else that we're focused in on for next year, and a recommendation for new math texts as well. In the high school, we have a smaller senior class leaving, a larger 8th grade class coming in, so that's why there are recommendations for increasing sections in English, social studies, math, and science at the high school, increasing time for the guidance secretary, and a recommendation for new science texts as well. And then in the area of special ed, again, we have a larger 8th grade class going into 9th grade of students with learning differences that will need some additional sections to accommodate that. That's where you see the majority of these sections being recommended. Increased sections in the middle school, which is a combination of the LA math program for 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. 3 classes are .6. There is a reduction at Hillside communications class that you did hear about last time as well. And we want to bring our speech and language teachers in for a day in the summer so they can begin to schedule students so there's less downtime at the beginning of the school year for services. And at the district level, we have a recommendation for the merging, for a hockey program to merge with other districts. We do have bus monitors in the budget as well. We have an increase in the nursing hours at each of the schools, and we are recommending that we hire an additional maintenance person with some plumbing background that can do a lot of our HVAC work internally and help with the fields outside as well. So all these things are currently, that I went over, are currently included in the proposed budget. Okay. So on the appropriation side, you have the 4 general categories and what they each handle. In the area of general support, you have the Board of Education, the central administration, finance, legal, operations, maintenance, insurance, and payroll tax. The instructional side makes up the majority of the budget, and that's for curriculum supervision, all the teaching positions, special education, media, pupil services, technology, and co-curriculum. That's where you'll see the bulk of our budget. Transportation, and then the undistributed is really the employee benefits and our debt service. And again, on page 14 of your book, it gives you a brief description of each of those categories as well. To look how the money is distributed amongst those 4 areas, again, instruction takes up almost 62% of that, the portion of our budget. General support, 8.9%. Undistributed, or the benefits and debt service, 26%, and transportation, 3.2%. So now we get into the various lines within each of those broad categories. I don't think I need to read each of the numbers to you, although I can if you'd like me to. But you have it in front of you, and you have it up here as well. So pretty much the lines are not, in this area, are not going up a great deal. You see an increase on the, a bit on the operations side, but overall, the general support budget is going up $20,000, or $21,000. Okay? Yes?
What are special items?
Insurance.
And policy and to participate in policy. I'm sorry, and?
And to, and BOCES, like the participation. With the Board of Ed, the fact that we're estimating 77,000 through the end of this year, but we're budgeting for around 72,000 next year. Was there any special?
Because of the hiring?
Yeah, search and
The search
such.
and-
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So before I go on, did anybody have a question, other questions on the area of general support? Any of these lines, any questions about any of these items? Good? Okay. So onto the instruction side. And as you again, see in the budget book, cost of building administrative salaries, teacher salaries, textbook supplies, equipment, support services like library, pupil services, guidance, health, screening, psychological services, etc. So again, I just take a moment to look over the lines. You see the teaching line is going up. That's a virtue of the additional positions primarily and the contractual obligations that we have with salaries. But that also includes the extra positions. That's why you see that going up. Special education, same thing. We're increasing the sections and such.
And so, Roy, any consultants that you're bringing in would be under curriculum development?
No.
No,
No.
they're in the other
They're
area.
teaching.
Teaching.
They're under teaching,
Yeah.
okay.
What is curriculum development then?
So that will include, that's
Jeremy's
Jeremy's
salary,
salary and
secretarial.
secretarial support salary for that office.
And supplies and some.
Minor supplies,
Yeah, minor,
not much,
like
not much in the area of
but they're
supplies.
all-
But it's primarily salaries that are associated with this curriculum instruction
Not
office.
the ELA that we were talking about.
No, no, no,
That's what
no.
you were-
That's what I was,
No.
like, so like the ELA or the...
That's in the
The
teaching line.
social, the SEL.
It's under the
Did you- or did you
category of
switch it?
teaching. Yeah, we
Yeah.
moved it to the BOCES
You did?
area of teaching, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And like the consultants we have for the Lottie?
That's under the BOCES.
That's
That-
all under teaching, that all is
Yep.
under
That's
that.
all under
All
teaching,
under there.
okay.
I just have a question about how, I mean, this is a broader question, and maybe, Roy, you can answer it, or other board members, but as you think about, so we've got the district's growing, we had to add some teachers this year, and if you look at the numbers, I mean, how, I just want to understand, because you look at the 5-year revenue projections you put together, and you see this gap, so I get concerned about raising, revenues, which is fine if we keep the students, but if there's a dip down in students, how does that dealt with? 5 years from now, there's a dip down in students, we've made these hires. Years ago, we didn't have the tax cap to deal with, so you could play with it a little bit more, but now we do, and we've got this gap that exists. How do you begin to think about managing the teacher population in that scenario?
Well, if there's a decrease in enrollment, to your point,
Yeah.
then you would be cutting staff. You'd be
Yeah.
reduction in force, ripping
Yeah.
staff members, and they go, when you lay somebody off, they stay on a preferred list in case you increase again, so you'd have to call them back in.
Okay.
And if you look at the student enrollment, it's not like it's going either up or down, it's been doing this.
Yeah, it does vary.
In fact, I think it was about a year ago or 2 years ago when it was going down, people in the community, were insisting that our enrollment was continuing to do that, and it
The
Really
part that's difficult in Hastings is the real estate, people moving in.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to predict. You can do birth rates and things like that. If you were to look at the enrollment projections that we've had from 5 years ago, we're way over where they recommend, or where they thought we would be. And that's a lot to do with people moving in, housing turnovers and things like that. That's so hard to predict.
Yeah, okay.
And we do try to go on historical data. We think we'll have more first graders than we do kindergartens next, because there tends to be in one area that we get a lot more students. 8th to 9th, we get an increase in students, and sometimes into the 5th grade as well. So, but that's the area that's hard to predict.
But any time it shifts, and in a particular grade, here we've needed more, but in
Yeah.
other years, there have been grades where we needed less, and so
Yeah. That's
you would end up doing that.
that's not the fun part, when you start ripping people.
Right, and that's That's what I'm
Yeah.
concerned about. Right.
I think the question, even someone, even if you had 100% of your staff tenured, if you still could, if the position's eliminated, you can still reduce staff, if that's what you're
Yeah, okay, so
concerned about.
that was a question.
Okay,
I didn't want to
yeah.
go into too much detail right here, it's a longer
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but that,
Right.
I know, when I was first on the board, that's what I was
Right.
wondering about too. But the idea is that, that there has to be a position, even for someone that's tenured, there has to actually be the need
Be a
for the
position for it.
position.
Got it.
And so,
Okay.
is it just the tenured staff or even the non-tenured staff that would go on the preferred?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody?
Whoever's in probationary.
So, and so then, like, if in a subsequent year we needed to add someone back, they would be at the top of the list.
First recall.
To come back,
They stay on the list for 7 years.
okay. Thank you.
So do we have any questions in this area that you'd like to talk about or ask about? And again, I know it's a lot to take in. You have the budget books that will explain, what's involved in each of the lines there. But if you have questions, if not tonight, we'll have another opportunity as well.
Roy, I guess my one question is, I know that we've cut back the amount of money on, for the Laddie
Yes.
program, and I know it's been, that Gail's been very happy with it, and the teachers in the middle school have been very happy with it. Is it just because we've reached the point that we've gone through all the training, we don't need as much?
Yeah,
or-
Gail and I have spoken about it, and at this point, we feel that the teachers that need to go through the training have gone through the training, and Gail feels pretty good about that and can continue to support their work, even though, the Laddie classrooms, it's not just about a Laddie classroom, it's about teaching strategies. And so teachers who have gone through the summer training and the year coaching have come away with really solid strategies. So perhaps they're not running an entire, when Nancy came in to describe it, a Laddie classroom, but they are pulling certain strategies that work for them in the classroom. So that might be problem-based learning or student-centered learning or something, maybe that component of it. Or maybe they're using a facilitation grid because they learned that in the training. And that's the component of Laddie they're using. So we want to hold on to the strategies that are working well. Gail feels good about supporting that work as she goes in the classrooms. The $20,000 was left in there primarily to support the elementary school teachers who have gone through that last wave.
So that they're
And
more recent.
so they could just have some coaching, if necessary, throughout this year. That's really why that was left. Not to start any new cohorts, not to do any additional intense training or anything like that, but really just to support that last wave of teachers going through from a coaching perspective.
So would the expectation be that by the subsequent year, you wouldn't need it at all anymore, or?
Probably, but I think that really depends on the building principals and what they might recommend and what they would want to do in their buildings.
Just to follow up on that, because, I saw that instead of the 90,000 this year, it's 20,000 this
Yes.
year for Laddie. So it's primarily for the coaching for Hillside. Is it like a retainer we're paying? I know you said it's an as-needed, so it's possible that we may use it all, we may not.
Correct.
Do we pay it all up front?
No.
Okay.
Pay it, it goes through BOCES, it's a BOCES contract.
Okay.
And so we get billed for the days that they come.
Okay.
And we pay it after they get here.
Well, just real quickly, just
Sure.
maybe a refresher for me. I think we talked 3 weeks ago on the technology side about the replacement of PCs and other laptops, et cetera. At $175,000 from the estimated end of year to the proposed budget, so that's a 10% increase on a year-on-year. Just as a new board member, is that typical?
Yeah, which line are you?
I'm just looking at the technology change, and I,
Oh, he's on the, so we're going to get,
right, so it's 175,000 over
Over
1.2.
Anticipated expense.
Anticipated, and we talked about what it was
Yep.
3 weeks ago, which I get, but now I'm just kind of thinking in terms of year-on-year change. Is that normal?
Wait, so you're looking at the budget versus the estimated actual?
Yes.
Estimated end-of-year proposed budget. And same question, actually. I'll ask both questions at once. So interscholastic athletics, certainly $30,000 for hockey. Got it. Even net of that, you're still a 10% year-on-year change for interscholastic athletics.
Some of that's salaries, because the coaching salaries go up.
Wait, but you're talking about the whole technology.
Yes, the
category.
entire
Yeah, the whole
technology.
technology
Well, part
category.
of that
This
is
is a lot.
but part of
We're
it,
switching.
We moved the testing from the teaching.
Right, there's a couple.
The category, there
Okay.
was things that we're doing through BOCES that are just categorical changes from somewhere else. So
Got it.
I think it was like 50,000 of that change was attributable
To testing.
to testing that we were previously doing through another contract that wasn't under technology.
Okay.
But because it's like kind of through BOCES, this closer, we moved it. So that's why one of the line items kind of jumped up. But then if you were to look back, in another part of the budget, there's a reduction. So that will have to do with that, the majority of that increase. Or, half of it at least.
That's the last line item in technology
Yep.
there?
Yep.
You'll see that where it says test scoring also,
Okay.
and that line went up to 160 from what it had been. That's the end number.
And I can follow up with you at another time, I guess. I'm just looking at, I'm actually just interested to know what is the historical year-on-year change
Right.
in prior years, and what are we, supposed to be thinking about, expecting from past experience? What is the typical technology bump up? And is it smooth, or is it technology stays constant for 4 years and then we have to do a big reboot?
No, we've been-
It's not, it's more just kind of the broad.
Yeah, no,
How do these numbers play out? And I
In
should have
terms of
looked at it
equipment,
closer to the
in
beginning of it.
terms of equipment replacements, we're pretty steady.
Yeah,
We don't see any large, because we have a replacement plan in place.
okay.
So we're not jumping up to buy all, like, new things. We have enough, so it's a matter of replacing stuff, so that's fairly steady. The only time that it potentially could have jumped up is when we had to redo our infrastructure in the closets, but we were able to use the Smart Schools bond money for that, so it didn't come out of our operational budget. I imagine 5 years from now, it's something the board will have to consider. I don't know the length of service to some of the switches and
Yeah.
things like that as technology changes to maintain the infrastructure, but that's something you probably should be considering 5 years down the line for that. But in terms of the replacement equipment, it's steady. Because we have a rollover plan in place. To Maureen's point, sometimes you'll see switching in lines because we're going through BOCES for this year, we did previously,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's what causes certain lines to jump up.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily the most representative.
Correct.
You know,
That's why you need
year-on-year,
things,
year-on-year
yeah.
change.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I
So
get
if you
it.
go through the budget book, the lines in the budget book, you should be able to explain that.
And then with the emerging technology, that is kind of a year-to-year
Yes.
thing that could potentially.
That could drop
reduce,
off,
Yeah.
reduce as well.
Which is the trainers, and that is, like any type of PD, it's a commitment that may be reduced, I would think, possibly the following year. It
Yep.
went down from the previous year, so we're like just
Mhm.
reducing it a bit.
On page 31, school security, which I'm just realizing now is under teaching.
Yes.
Strange. Do you feel like we're getting to a steady state on that now? Because I know that we've been sort of increasing the amount of security at all the schools over the last few years. Do you feel like we're where we need to be now, or do you think that there's going to be
Well,
some other, will we be start getting video cameras and things like that?
I
More
think
than
we're
we
okay
have?
with our cameras and the personnel. The only thing that could potentially impact that is if decisions made to have our security guards do some of the supervision at games or evenings and things like that. There's been some discussion about it might be better to have a security type personnel there that might have carry more weight. So that's the only thing that I could see potentially.
And would
could
that
add
show
to
up
it.
here, or would that show up in?
That would just show up here because we contract with them,
Well,
right? Or-
it could, or it could show
Yeah.
in contractual. and do-
So is there security currently showing up in Scholastic?
There is. The only thing, and not to say we're going to pump it up, but Eileen knows that at our health and safety meetings, in a perfect world, people would love to see one more guard here, just so that, because some of the entrances are not covered, so it would be helpful, like even in terms of, we break our security guards with the staff, and it's a lot on the buildings to constantly like juggle it, so I think we're happy with what we have,
Yeah,
but I think we don't have a large, we only have we have 3.5 people, so, it's a big building, it would be nice maybe to have one additional person.
And yet, there's also been some requests, discussions about increasing the time at Hillside after school. Because we do have
So much that
people
goes
in
on
the
there.
building.
Yeah.
And so to increase some hours till 6 o'clock or something like that was thought about as well.
Forgive if you've answered this and I missed it. There was some discussion on district test scoring. Did we discuss the drop in the amount that we were allocating 10,000? And I'm not.
That's
It
moved.
got switched to the
that's the
BOE.
switch. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
thought. The other question is the outside education evaluator that's helping us evaluate our APPR scores. Is that based on the HEDI scores or based on our SLOs? Because the HEDI
It's-
scores I feel our test scores are not all that representative of who our teachers are necessarily.
It's really not based on either. It's based on all of it. It's based on the
Okay.
entire APPR plan. So the person that we have come in, Larry, which you see is being reduced. He originally started from when the middle school was a focus school. We had to hire an outside educational evaluator who was working with us, helped
That was
us,
covered by the grant.
which was
actually.
covered by the grant. But then he helped, when the APPR regulations came out, he was helping us put that together and do some of the analysis of the teacher scores when they counted. But we still have to do them, even though they don't count. So he does help with some of that analysis, although a lot of that's being transitioned into the Director of Curriculum Instruction Office. So I see a reduction there, but he has also helped in working with our teachers on formative assessments, developing our own in-house type tests, if you will, assessment for children, and having teachers look at the questions and analyzing to do some work with our kids. That's what he's been focused on.
Oh, great.
But I see his time being diminished, and it probably will be weaned off very soon, within the next year, as more of the analysis comes out of the Director of Curriculum Office.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else in this category? Should I go on? Okay. Okay, next is transportation, just a very, very slight bump. You can see also, in terms of employee benefits, we did get a benefit of it paying less on the teacher pension side, but it does include our health care that did go up, et cetera, so you saw some increase there.
And also the new staff.
And the new staffing reflects that as well, and a drop in our debt service as well.
And the transportation, it's a small increase, but that includes the bus monitors or.
It does.
So the line am I on the right category? Yes, the line that says
Sure.
in-district contract, that includes,
Like on transportation?
yeah, that includes,
No, I think there's a separate line.
46.
Is there a separate line for bus monitors?
Should be
It
separate.
may include it. I mean, yes, I thought we added a line, yes, the in-district contract, that includes that, because
Bus
it's actually decreasing by 20, so the net increase was
70. Oh, okay, all right.
And can I just add, just for people who aren't familiar, because this really struck me, the transportation, the big chunk of it is our out-of-district busing, and we are required by law to pay for that. Maureen, I think I'm correct on that, right?
Yeah.
So that where our in-district busing, I think, is in the 200,000 range, our out-of-district is in the 800,000 range, which covers, children with special needs and just people who elect to send to private school. But I think it's important that our community realizes that we have
Right.
that's an expense that we are required to pay. Quick question, what is public service?
That is if we have a student that elects to take an MTA, like a private bus. And occasionally we will that would be a child that maybe attends a private school. We've had children who went to schools in Riverdale in the past, and if they were transportation eligible. So although you'll notice in the last few years, we haven't had anybody elect that, we do keep that in, because then we purchase the pass directly for them.
Okay, thank you.
How far are we required by law? to-
15.
15 miles.
15 miles.
Yeah, it's
15
more than
miles for
2 and less than
private,
15, right?
For special education forensically placed, I think it's.
A little farther,
50.
right?
Yeah, for special ed, it's much more, but for the kids
Private
going out
15.
Horace Mann, Hackley, or something like that,
Right.
I think it's 2 to 15,
Oh,
right?
2 to 15, yes.
Yeah, it's got to be more than 2 miles away
Right.
and less than
Because that
15
fits
miles away.
within our in-district policy for
Right.
students over 2.
Yeah, so it covers all the private schools in Riverdale, but also schools that are
But
north.
we do combine a lot of the route, some of they are intermingled with some of our, our own children we're sending. We try to gain efficiencies where possible.
No, and you've done a great job over the past few years with working on those combinations.
Right. But, it's hard too. I mean, it's one of those items, sometimes, you want to be efficient, but you have to consider the length of life for the children. And then you try to be able to accommodate people because sometimes the rides will be just too much for any child.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not challenging whether it's right or wrong, but I think it's important for people to understand that there are certain costs that look quite high that we have no choice on.
Okay, any questions on this? All right, let's go to the revenue side. Quick summary on the revenue. As we mentioned earlier, increasing state aid about $570,000, mostly due to building aid. We're transferring $1.94 million of our fund balance into the budget for next year, $725 from the retirement reserve, $550 from the tax cert reserve, and we see a decrease of $100,000 in miscellaneous receipts. So that's just a quick summary. So here you see a comparison of revenues from the adopted budget, current adopted budget, and what our proposed budget would look like. So there you see the reflected increase in state aid.
But we had also talked
So-
about the state aid, that it would go down again next year.
Yeah, that's,
It did, and we actually lowered this number a bit, remember, because
We were concerned.
about, that's a big dip. So I think on the state aid run, it does actually show, a slightly higher amount.
we want to be very conservative
Right.
because you're not going to get as much building aid next year, so that gap to make up is going to be fairly large. So we try to reduce that so the gap is not
Try
as
to
great
reduce the
next year.
gap for next year,
Yeah.
the following year.
Correct.
Some of it, too, is expenditure-driven aids, and
Yeah.
the state, when they publish what aid we're going to receive, they do it based upon what they see our current spending is in certain areas, and they project. So there are times that they may project it based upon if we're spending more with BOCES this year, that may not be the case in
Next year.
subsequent years, so that will impact, state.
Okay, and again, you see the increase in property taxes of $629,000. And just to share with you where we see our fund balance, June 30th of 2016, and where we estimate them to be in June of this year, to give you just a sense of where we're at with things. Tax cert going down about $1 million. Employee benefit accrued liability about the same. Retirement system contributions will be down almost about $500,000. Debt service about the same, and the other areas are the same. We still are able to maintain a 4% reserve in our unassigned reserve, and you see our restricted reserve going down about $1.5 million. Again, just something the board should be aware of and keep an eye on moving forward. But as you know, the comptroller recommendation was to reduce some of our tax cert reserve monies and retirement system contributions monies, which we tried to do some of that this year.
So that's the two, when you were showing us many slides ago, that the retirement reserve, the number in the revenue was going from 350 to 725, and the tax cert was going up, from 400 to 550. That's
We're taking it out of here.
We're taking it out of
Yes.
here, and that's why the balance is here
Correct.
right now.
That's correct.
And
And what
we're
we
also
paid out
paying
this year.
tax certs also.
Yeah, we're paying
Right.
tax certs from this year.
Okay.
Are they
And-
the tax rates that we're paying are primarily commercial, right? We haven't seen the scars.
No, we have not.
No.
Well, the scars, they should really just impact the overall assessment, because generally they're settled within the year. So
So you don't
that's
receive
gonna
the taxes?
impact. We don't, I mean, occasionally you could have an individual homeowner file it. It depends how they file it, but if they just do it in the normal process, they'll just receive it, and then it'll affect our overall assessment. Everyone's pays a little more. So
Okay.
we anticipate that with the projected assessment we have, that it will most likely go down a bit, as a lot of the homeowners that have been reassessed will be challenging their new assessment. I don't think it's substantial, but it will definitely.
That's pretty much it for the budget, proposed budget presentation. I did say we would have a hearing next week because I thought we might have one.
Do you want to start at 7:30 then?
And we can start at 7:30
Okay.
for a budget hearing if anybody wants to come in. And then we have our other, board is asked to adopt the budget at the April 18th meeting, and we have a May 2nd budget hearing that we're required to have as well. Okay. Questions? We're good?
Roy, one
Yes.
last question. Is there anything that you or somebody else had hoped to include in the budget that we've chosen not to include?
You know, we did include all the recommendations that we received from the principals, and when we looked at class size and everything, I don't think there was anything that we left off the table other than the hot tub in the principal's office for the high school. But that was it.
I thought it was the dog.
Sorry, my bad.
The only thing that we did reduce, when we look at the building level projects, there's quite a bit, where actually, I think when the facilities committee
Yeah, that's
reports
really
on
where-
today,
the one area.
there were there's definitely still a lot of things that need to be updated and fixed in the building. So-
Not in our buildings,
Not
no.
I know. They actually are pretty nice, but there's definitely a lot that we would like to have fixed. So when Joe and I compiled the list, it was like over $1 million, and what we ended up putting in the budget was about 300. But we may need to do a few things this year that we want to present, I think, next week, some items that we feel that need to be done.
Yeah, there's always maintenance. There are always maintenance issues that you can do more of. So we try to prioritize as best we can within reason.
I did it.
Sorry, Patrick.
Poor guy. Lost his hearing.
Heart attack in bed.
Should I turn it off, or
Just don't touch.
just don't touch it? Okay, I'll never touch it again.
Well, anyway, look, thank you. That's
Yeah.
great, and it's wonderful to be able to honor.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
Roy,
Yes.
the one other thing,
Sure.
which I just think is a lovely thing, but I don't know if you actually said, because you mentioned that the budget was going up 2.86%, and that the property tax change was 1.65, but the tax rate change is actually going down.
It is. We want to be a little bit careful with that because of the assessment. It's kind of hard to judge it, and I don't want to mislead anybody by having them think that, gee, look, the tax rate's going down, so you're going to pay less taxes.
Well, not everyone will.
Right. I mean, I think if your house was
Your individual.
right, if you were
Yes.
assessed the same as you were prior to, then yes,
Yes.
your taxes would go down. But I don't know where people's assessments are, and that gets a little bit confusing for some people because they were paying this, but now their house is assessed up here.
Right.
Even though the tax rate is going down, they're going to be paying more. So I just want to be careful and not try to mislead people about that.
It doesn't have to do with our budget anyway.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not cutting.
We don't control
anything
that part
out
of it.
No, but
Yeah.
but for people whose assessment either stayed the
Oh, yeah,
same
yeah.
or went down,
And then it's a fair statement to say their tax will be going down.
And actually, some people, if that is the case, they'll have a significant tax
Yeah.
decrease because of the assessment. But again,
Assessments,
there
yeah.
will be a lot of SCAR filings, so it may end up dropping a bit. but-
All right, then.
Thank you.
Do you want to?
Sure.
Okay, so we are going to move on now to the public comment.
Thank you for coming out, folks.
So if there's anybody in the audience that wants to make a public comment, this is the first opportunity. Okay, looks like that's a no-go. So we'll move on then to the business portion of the meeting. We have a number of items on here. Did anybody have questions or comments on any of these business items?
I did.
Yep. Well, you're looking at it. CBiz
Yes.
is,
They revalue and prepare the report on our fixed assets every year.
oh, the inventory?
They said it's like barcodes and tags and things like that.
We actually tag our own equipment, and then they help prepare the depreciation schedules on the assets
Okay.
that we have to report.
And the other one was the Columbia one? That's for the next school
Yeah.
year?
Yes.
I thought it was for this year. It read
No,
this.
it's for this year, it is for this year.
Oh, it is for this year?
Yeah.
So they're
It's like a
very-
catch-up,
Last year, I
right?
think I got the contract for last year. They're not very timely. They're Great
Okay.
service with the contract department.
Okay.
Don't go to Columbia Business School.
Already been there, done that.
I didn't realize that.
Anyway, so, moving on.
I'm sure the people who work in there did that.
This is a long time ago.
Maybe they need to revamp the billing
Maureen,
class.
is that the
Maybe that's
typical-
it.
Is that the typical $2,500 a month?
Yes.
That's sort of the going rate for, and that's,
Well, I'll be honest with you, I mean, they
That's-
really want, I mean, I think it actually is a good rate
That's
for
cheap.
what we receive.
Yeah, it is cheap
okay.
for what they supply us.
And it's several people, right?
No, it's
Or is it
one.
just one
One person.
person? So they handle the training needs for all the...
I think they're here for about 4 hours a day because they're here
Mm-hmm.
to cover the practices, which, again, in this season, you have people who go early and people who go late. So it could be 4 to 5 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah, that they're here. So, and that actually, they do start in the summer when this, the
Preseason.
sports- Yeah, so it's
Okay.
August 15th.
Mhm.
And are here for all our games and things like that. So even if they were here on a Friday and then there was an evening game, they would stay, through all the practices that happen from after school on. So obviously, I think they do it's a cost to Columbia. And they do it, I think, from what I understand, because then they get more business. So people get hurt, they go to them to get therapy.
Right.
But they did want to increase the contract this past year, and we were like, well, we budgeted. When we initially, Adam had said that they still know they're making it 40,000, but I said, well, you didn't tell, it wasn't his fault, they didn't tell us till
Right.
September, so they held the 30,000 price.
So they're holding 30,000 for the 17,
Yeah,
18?
And I think so, yeah. for both.
Okay. And then just checking on the district-wise stuff, that there was a check that was voided.
Okay, so what happened with that was, they had placed an ad.
Okay,
uh,
so
And I guess my accounts payable person sent them the check to reimburse them, but they said, no, do me a favor to send it directly to the vendor.
oh, okay.
So that's what I did.
But they've been paid their other payments and
I think
things
they
like
were
that.
paid one.
Yeah,
They
just
were
one, because I
paid
think the
on
next one is based on...
It was just one based on
Yeah.
the contract.
And then the January revenue report, I was just looking at the 150K in...
Notice it's a little misleading because the way, and I will go back and for the next month, I'll have them break it out. We budget out kind of a one line item, but what ends up happening is it's a bunch of different things that make up that miscellaneous revenue.
Right.
So if you kind of look at, there's some revenues that are above it, that you'll see that there was no budget in there for. You don't see it on the sheet, he drops it in. But we'll definitely make a projection because some of that is like refunds from BOE season things that.
So it's stuff that comes in late in the year?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, because I saw that we're budgeting for 160 for next
Yeah,
year
yeah,
for that,
so
so...
that's fine.
Okay, great.
It's not really a question, it's a conundrum a bit. I see in the warrants, we have, I think, several settlements of special education suits, and it sort of goes to my same issue that I've had when we approve or accept the CSE recommendations. I spoke to NISBA about it, and I had a conversation with a board member from another district who's also a lawyer, and we both said it's a hard position as a board member to be asked to approve something that you can't review. And I don't want to review it. I understand that there's confidentiality issues around it, so we can't. But what she said that they do in her district, and I just wanted to float this out there, she said for settlements, if they're very small, maybe not so much, but for anything that becomes somewhat sizable, sometimes they will have their attorney meet with the board in executive session to discuss it so that you can vote.
I think that did happen, Lisa, is
Yeah.
that these were from previous years
Yeah.
before you were on
Right.
the board. You would be able to review
Yeah.
them.
Oh,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah. We do.
because I couldn't tell that from
Yes.
this. Okay.
It was previously
Previous to.
from like last year approved, and these
Yeah.
are payments that. were
Okay,
previous.
all right, so we have that system in
Yes.
place
Mhm.
then?
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So
The
you
good news
guys
is we
have...
haven't had any this year.
Okay, so you guys have reviewed the, okay, so I will rely on
Yes.
your guys,
Yeah,
on you
We
guys for
could
that.
always
Okay,
come in and review them.
But that system does exist.
terrific, okay, thank you.
It does. Any other questions on the business items? All right, can I get a motion then to approve items 1 through 18?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Okay. Section B and the placement for services. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Under the personnel, comments, questions?
You mean of the three categories?
Sure.
I just had a general question, if you could just go through what the different types of leave of absence are, and sort of what's the arrangement for pay versus non-pay, and how that all works.
So, if someone is out on a medical leave of absence, there's two ways. If they have enough sick days in their bank, in their individual sick bank, and they're out for a valid, obviously, medical reason, and they provide us documentation, they could be on an extended medical leave with pay and be receiving their pay and benefits based upon what days they have available.
So it's essentially sick days?
Sick days.
Okay.
Then, and that's, I mean, you could have that for, then there's kind of more, what I would say, more FEMLA-type sick leaves that occur. And with those, you'll sometimes see where it'll be a combination of things for one person. It could start off as a FEMLA sick leave with pay, and then after their paid days where the doctor deems them to be fit to return to work, they're still allowed under the law to continue to be on FEMLA unpaid, but that would allow them to retain their health benefits under that 12-week time period. And then some people, after that time is over, they may decide to take some additional weeks off, and that would be like an unpaid family leave, where they would just either pay for they would pay the district for their benefits potentially for the month. They may say, I just want an extra month off, and I know I'll have to pay for my medical during that time. So there's kind of a combination of things that can happen, especially if that person's out on a childcare leave. It's a little bit different.
Anything else? Can I get a motion to approve all the items under the personnel section?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. We have minutes. These are from the February 28th meeting.
A question, Janine and I had talked, there was a section that was missing.
Well,
Is it back, or is it?
No, we were discussing the principal's spoken about their line item request in the budget, and it was part of actually Dr. Montesano's presentation, so they didn't have separate files to give me, so I'm going to go back and review the tapes, and I'll put in some comments from the principals.
Thanks, yeah, because as it stands right now, like, you can't even tell that the principals were present. So on that, I think,
Right.
I don't know if we want to delay a vote until they're all there. I would personally abstain at this point, just because they're not complete. Your call, obviously.
I think we could just leave them posted as draft, and when they're corrected, then we'll vote on them. So we'll just
Okay.
table that one for now and wait till they're corrected. Okay? Committee reports, facilities. I called in, so I wasn't really taking notes, but...
Donna, do you have your notes?
Maureen, what did we talk about?
No, I think what we talked about, I just don't have the details of it. We talked about the number, pardon me?
Field update?
The first was the field update.
Yeah. Field update.
Do you want to speak?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, we just wanted to give the facilities committee an update on where we stand with the completion of the Burke Estate field. They are back on site, and we hope that the work will be completed sometime at the beginning of May, and that would allow us to get back on the field sometime optimistically in October sometime. So they are back on site. Unfortunately, there was a delay based upon weather. So,
Stella?
No, Stella. I'll just say it was based upon weather, and just, this is sort of the nature of doing a large construction project. There are some delays that occur. So, but we're happy to see that they're back on
They did get like
site.
1.5 feet of snow in Massachusetts on the sod farm, so... it's-
Yeah, I know. And of course, the sod farm, are very anxious to get rid of that sod so they can replant for the new season. So that'll be done. But a big part of the meeting was that we also, a couple things have come up that need to be addressed. We have the roof at the Burke Estate garage is leaking. It is something that we know that's not in great shape, but we just had hoped that we could get a couple more years out of it. And we have a lot of new equipment in there, and just over the course of the winter, it's fallen into a greater disrepair. The issue with that is that right now, Joe did give me one quote so far. There must have been a fire back in the day there, so the repair is extensive to the roof. So we did get one quote in the $62,000 just to repair that roof. And there's also the roof down at the Burke.
Is that because there's structural stuff
Yeah,
on
right,
the
yes, a lot of
inside.
structural things, because I was like, wow. Yeah. But,
The timbers inside are all charred
right.
Yeah.
on fire.
And everything has to be redone.
Yeah, the pictures
And
were
it's the
quite,
type of roof they were put- It's not a, it's like an EPMD, like, it's again, it's not just what, like you put on your house. It's it is a different type of roof. So we do have one quote. We're hoping to get a bit lower. We're getting 2 more quotes from other vendors, but Joe does feel it may be $50,000. And then we also, at the same time, the roof down at the Reynolds Field is not in great shape either. So we were looking to see whether it would make sense to try to do both of them, but we absolutely have to do the burp. So we have money in the budget for next year for other projects, and if we were to do these projects, then there's a lot of other things that won't be done. So what our recommendation will be next week is in Joe's budget, in the facilities budget, there were areas that we underspent in some of our fuel costs, and we would like to propose a transfer into the contractual services to get some of these items addressed. There is also at Hillside School a retaining wall that is
On the playground.
on the playground that over the course of the winter has fallen into, it's in
The
worse
railroad
shape.
ties
Yeah,
that are-
railroad ties.
that are in the
Again,
front.
we've been replacing them, but we decided that was part of the $1 million list that got cut. But Joe was like, it has to be done. It's a safety hazard. And we did get a quote for that, and because it's the entirety of that area, I think that alone was $40,000. But again, we always pay more. We pay unions. We have to pay the union scale. So anything that you could get done at your house is always going to be, double because of Public Works prevailing wage that we do pay. And then there's also the walkway at Hillside. When Joe and I were up there looking at the playground, it's in rough shape, so we did ask that same contractor to give us a quote just to kind of repair that sidewalk in around Hillside. Kind of where that rock is also in that area that's all like dirt, and also to put some kind of pavers that the grass can grow through. Again, there's different parts of it. We have to do the retaining wall. We maybe should do the sidewalk since they're there, because once they're there, the pricing is better. So you kind of see what, to add a little bit more on. And then the front of the middle school,
Sidewalk
the
in the front of the middle
sidewalk
school.
is really broken up over the course of this winter, and to cut that out and replace it, and again, not that we have to do it this way, but we just got a quote for 2 things, just to repair the pads and cut it out and redo the cement. But we also did request a quote that if we were to do that, to put in the logo of FMS.
Okay, that was in front of the high school.
Like the high
If
school.
you're going to do it, you're not going to, it would be the time to do it if we're going to do it, but it is a tripping hazard. There's chunks of it coming out, so.
There was also there were a number of things that
Well, we have
Joe-
more than that, but.
he had a long list of things, and when you heard about them and saw them,
Well, the middle school auditorium,
auditorium
is
wall
horrible.
was just,
Paint peeling from an old leak.
it was really sort of shocking to see.
Yeah. Is there a longer-term plan for the middle school auditorium at this point to do something with it?
I don't know that we have anything. We've talked about a lot of things
Yeah.
up there. I don't know that we've landed any one of them.
Next
But
bond.
I think it's a bond issue, quite frankly.
I know, one of the things that, back in the PTSA, that we had talked to you that I love the idea of is possibly leveling out the floor, and it could be really a multi-purpose room. You could have dividers that get stored on the side. It could be a dance studio, it could be a music suite, it could be a testing
Yeah.
area, but just a really, it would be a great project.
I think we looked at, when we looked at just some numbers, and again, when you say to an architect, just give us numbers, they base it on square footage, and sometimes, depending on what you say the use of it is, but it was definitely, 3 million plus, because there is, all those walls, all that plaster would have to be taken down, and I'm sure
There may
there would
be
be an
asbestos up
abatement,
there.
Yeah.
up there for sure, and it would be at the minimum a $3 million project.
And
Is there
air
any way to-
conditioning, too, right?
Air conditioning.
And air conditioning, because it's very, very hot up there.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was just thinking of it as a spare stage, because one of the things that did come up with Culture Shock, there's so many performing things that we
Yeah.
have that our one auditorium
Like a mini
gets very
theater
much
type thing,
overbooked,
yeah.
and we don't have rehearsal space.
Right.
So that was one of the things
You
that
mean
happened.
just a stage for rehearsal space, not
Exactly,
for
rehearsals,
performance?
yeah.
You could keep the.
Yeah,
Because
you
our
keep the
current
stage
stage is
there.
in use so much
Yeah.
for different.
Right. So,
Yeah.
that way, different acts could be rehearsing while they're setting up the set, on the main stage or stuff like
Great
that.
idea.
And it would allow us to expand it to a dance program as well, which would be wonderful for this district.
There's definitely a lot of ideas, and I think the other piece that will tie into that is the enrollment. Like, if we continue to even see little increases in enrollment, where as the kids come to the middle school and high school, there may be a need for more classroom space, which would then, there was some thoughts that like where the current music department is housed and right down the hall from here, that they could potentially move up to a music suite and create like kind of all the music department up there, and then those classrooms could be recaptured for other, so, I mean, again.
There's no shortage of ideas for that space.
Especially with like special ed, like if we had different ones coming
Well,
down here, you know, so.
Yeah.
But the bottom line
Bottom line
was,
is it
that
costs money.
Joe, yeah, and that Joe had a number of things
Yes.
that he wanted, things that were kind of the A list and the B list, but there were a number of things on the A list that we were going to have to
Yes.
try to figure out
There
how
were
we
some
could
doors that needed to be
move
replaced.
some money around to be able
And
to.
so alone, I think we have we still have $700,000 worth of doors that have to be replaced that are non-fire rated, but, so we had,
From the bond.
well, not only.
The ones that
not
were
from the bond.
not
No.
included in the bond.
Right.
Not in the bond.
Not in the bond.
So we only put like the worst of the worst in the bond, but, and then there were some that, once, you know, you replace them, you have to go, I mean, there's a lot of safety issues, and there's just some like locking issues and things, and we're not planning on doing those overnight, but next year we have 100,000 in the budget, and now he's like, I wish we even had, you know, so it's always that way, with, you try to keep the money in the instructional category and try to live with what you can in the buildings and grounds, but they are old buildings, and
Is that the kind of thing, though, that we could look to partnering with, you know, PTSA and the foundation? Because that's exactly the kind of project they like to see, where they don't then have to sort of then
Keep
fund it
refunding,
every year.
refunding.
It's more of a sort of one-time capital investment, and, you know, they can sort of say, hey, we did this.
right.
Are there parts of that that we could get aided? Like, because it is something that's, you know, if we're getting rid of asbestos and stuff like that, is that stuff that you get state aid for?
Yeah.
Like, could we break it down into sort of like remedial versus improvements?
See, the thing, what happens when we do the projects the way we're doing them now, like just fixing it, you can get aid on the projects if you file them with the state, get approval, and then do the project. What happens here is, like with the bonds, so then you do get back like 44% on the dollar. But if you can't do the project until it's approved, so.
Right.
And that, as you know, took us over a year at the state level. So that's why it is good to do bonds in some ways, because when you're just doing it like through your regular budget, there's not enough time to get the approval from the state to get it done.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's,
And by the time you do it, the costs go up.
yeah. So,
Okay. So one other small facilities question, and I know we've talked a few times when the Santonis were here talking about, I guess is it the coach's box or something that was right in their review, and we talked about possibly painting it like, you know, Nantucket gray or something. Has that been
I think we
followed
talked
up?
about trees up.
putting in
I think
shrubbery
we're gonna
to
plant
block.
trees
Oh,
behind
so there
it.
was,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
great.
We talked about,
Yeah.
yeah. So when the ground thaws,
Right.
do that one.
That, and
Wonderful.
with the sound system, that actually, I think
Yeah,
is.
the sound system, we're looking at alternative sound system to put on the other side of the field, so it wasn't right next to their house.
So it isn't by the, it's on the stadium, or the bleacher
Thank
side
you,
of the
that's
field.
great.
Okay. So we'll see the results of that, basically. Some things will flow through this year's budget.
I did go over a bunch of the quotes today, but again, we're just waiting on a few more vendors before we make the presentation.
Okay. The other committee was Diesel, which just met this afternoon. We had 3 of the groups that have been working, I mean, the focus was on addressing tolerance, or lack thereof, and in particular about racial intolerance. So there were a lot of groups. This was the issue that the PTSA was particularly interested in, and had met with Doug with, so Sylvia, who's in the audience now, was there as well, in addition to the regular group of people, which is a lot of administrators, teachers, administrators, and some of the other staff that's on there, guidance, and so I thought it was a really good discussion. I think that there are several different groups in town. This is kind of a good group to keep us all working together. Seemed to be the conclusion towards the end. The charge at the end was really that the Race Matters Committee, which is the internal committee comprising teachers primarily, they now have an administrator because Chris Kia was a teacher and has moved into administrator role, so they have him there as well. They have been developing different suggestions that they would like to see go forward to make it more a part of the structure of the day, and some of those will require changes to when you do staff development, when you do curriculum development, So they need some resources in order to do that. We talked a little about that. So they are going to go back and begin the discussions with the principals about changes that they can make in the school itself. As it rolls out, one of the things that we talked about as well was that parents need to become more involved. That may be a place, once the sort of structure of what's going on in the buildings is fleshed out a little bit more and sort of laid out for next year and possibly the year after that, and the allocation of resources that we'll need in order to make some of these things happen, then we can kind of bring in the external groups. There's Hastings Rise, there's the PTSA is interested, there's also the Hastings Tolerance Committee. So all of these are trying to sort of work towards the same end. But this one is in particular focused on racial issues, because as one of the teachers there today said, that seems to be the issue that is the hardest for the kids to talk about. In general, they're very good about talking about a lot of intolerance issues, but that the race one seems to be one that continues to be harder for people, so they really want to focus on that as part of this effort. So I thought it was a really good
I
discussion.
think it's the hardest for the teachers to talk about, too.
You know, I was approached by one of our county representatives, and they said, I think there's something through the county where they work with teachers to help them be able to facilitate these discussions, because I agree, it's very hard to do it the right way. And I think people need training.
Yeah, and they had border crossing was a program.
something that they were
Crossing
training
borders.
through that.
Crossing borders, sorry.
Border crossings. No, you're-
Border
What's in the
crossing,
news?
too.
They had that professional development earlier this year. The question is, do you want to roll it out? How do you roll it out to the rest of the staff? I mean, the Race Matters Committee seems to have taken a fairly measured approach in terms of growing themselves. But I think that, certainly seen today, that Sonia indicated she was, give me the resources and I'm happy to grow a little faster. So I think that was really, I think it was, productive in that sense. So we do have another meeting for this committee in the beginning of May. I think that they will be speaking with the principals clearly well before then. They'll have some plans in place. So we may hear something a little bit before then, but it's certainly by the meeting in May, we'll have another report out on where that's going to go for next year in terms of
Additional meeting.
Yes.
diesel, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing that sounds very good, and certainly there have been multiple conversations throughout the community. I was speaking with Sylvia and some of her colleagues from PTSA quite recently. You know, I think my own personal message to you, Roy, as a superintendent, and to the board for a future superintendent beyond, is I think it's very important that we engage the students around this as well and get their feedback in the process. You have a very sensitive student body and a very enlightened student body. So while we and all of our 40-plus-year-old wisdom can certainly attempt to cram down, I think there's this tremendous amount of interest that I assume probably rightly exists at the student level to have a diverse and enlightened existence and dialogue and exchange in their academic environments. And I just want to put that out there. I want to put it on camera. I think it's an important part. And as the leader of the district, who's going to be, when Race Matters comes to you in search of resources, I think it's just important to keep that in mind, that really running with this diversity and inclusion issue should be a two-way street of both adults working with best interests and also getting as much feedback as possible and input as possible from students.
Yeah, and I think, actually Lou spoke a little bit about that today. As controversial as that assembly program was, or colorful is another word we could use, what he did say was the resulting conversations that were happening in the classrooms between kids and with kids, many teachers said it was the best they've had in many, many years. So to your point, give them the venue and the opportunity, and they want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And some structure.
Yes.
Venue, opportunity,
And I do
structure.
think that's really the focus that the Race Matters Committee has been, is how do we bring this out to the kids? I think bringing in parents was really something that came out today, because we did talk about the fact that primarily this community is made up of people who don't deal with racial discrimination every day. And so it does fall off your radar. And how do we get those people to make sure that their kids who are going to be seeing some of these things in their classrooms that sparks discussions and things like that, how do you make sure that those parents are engaging those kids on those topics as well? So, and kind of trying to engage people. So,
And on the most basic level, there was a student who said to me, Current events. 80% of our current events touch on tolerance issues. It's a very natural place in a school and at the family dinner table to start to have these discussions.
So I think there'll be a lot more. I think that really the point is that we have to make it much more official that we're paying attention to this. Because as I think it was Roy, or not, it was Lou or...
Ross.
Thank you. It was an R.
No, it was over there.
He was over here.
He was over there.
Both of them had said, we have been talking about a lot of this for a long time, and we've had discussions in school, and we've talked about tolerance in school, and, the elementary is bringing up acceptance as one of the, we heard earlier in the year that they were working on the sort of 4 or 5 attributes, but acceptance was one of the attributes that they were going to be working on. And so there's a lot of this that goes on, but I think we have to be much more official about this is really an important thing for us, and that's why we're going to be doing this and spending this and talking about it more often than we have in the past, and more publicly.
I think it's 100% right. I think that concept of making it official is, the differentiating feature between what every other district the world over does and what the right way to hopefully do it in the long term would be.
Yeah, so it was good, and working more on that. So, Parker, anything you want to add?
Well, I guess going off on that a little bit, the assembly that we did have, I haven't had a chance to talk about yet. And I do think that what came out of it was the conversations that we had afterwards, and I think it was just incredible to see how our students were so quick to stand up for themselves in that situation.
Parker, could you just give the background as to what the assembly was?
So, we had a very colorful assembly.
This was the district attorney's office, the person in charge of the bias crimes unit, had come in to speak to the high school students and came in with a very, very strong visual presentation as well as her choice of words. Were just things that would not normally be something we would expect from her, and not the way that we want people to be talking in Hastings. So she got going, and then the kids ended up with a reaction to the things that she was showing and saying.
And it was kind of incredible. It was like one by one, the students kind of went up to the microphones and voiced how they were not okay with what we had just seen, and while we were all sort of getting over the shock of what we were just exposed to, it was a lot of coming together and talking about it, and while the assembly might not have been done in the best way, I think it was really great what came out of it, because we did end up talking about all those issues a lot because of the way it was done.
So the silver lining on that one, it's clearly the discussions that happened afterward.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Did you guys talk at all about having more discussions, or, because I think that's one of the things the committee was trying to deal with, is how do you make this a typical thing to be doing, as opposed to when you have a crisis moment?
I think a lot of what was talked about is that also people were worried that instead of focusing on the issues, we're going to focus on how, I don't want to say terrible, but how terrible the assembly was.
The presentation rather than the content.
It was jarring. I mean, there were kids crying, people went home, like it was just, I personally was not as affected as I saw people, but I have a brother who's a freshman. This was his first, like, I think it was his first like major assembly with the whole school, and he was just like, is that what these are like? Like I don't know.
Well, that's what Big Sisters of War, right? You'd find that out.
And I did have some friends who were they had a hard day, and I think that was a worry, is that the focus was going to be taken off of the issues and more put on to the fact that the assembly had gone wrong, and I think that that was the case at the beginning, but then we ended up kind of shifting and actually talking about
The issues.
the issues, and I think it was almost to combat that in a way that we wanted to, a lot of the upperclassmen wanted to make sure that those issues were still talked about, because we saw that that was happening.
Where was that coming? Were those in smaller groups?
Yeah, I know that in my lunches for the next week were about that, and in classes we were talking about it. I do know, so it was on a Thursday, so all the freshmen had PL, peer leadership, afterwards. I know they all talked about it, and it was really helpful for them to have that right afterwards. Yeah.
And I just want to commend the high school because they had every reason to believe that it would be done in a different fashion. I mean, it was the head of the bias crimes from, an incredibly prestigious, district attorney's office, from a woman who, had done this in other school districts. And I know right afterwards, I think they engaged the guidance team. A note went home to the parents, I think, before the kids were even home. So I just thought that the high school really handled things beautifully.
So well. Mr.
I've
A
heard.
was really, really great. He got up there right away, and instead of saying, there were students who were very vocal about the presentation, and instead of kind of shutting them down, he let them talk, and then he commended them on being able to stand up for themselves, and I think that was really important. It was really great for us to all see that we were supported in that situation.
Yeah, I've heard very similar feedback about how well he handled
Yeah.
what was clearly a very surprising and unexpected
Yes.
situation that he walked into.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next time we hear from you, it'll probably be a look at the end of the year. We starting to get there yet, or like talking about what's going on? Yeah.
But, I mean, well, I guess
Spring vacation is coming
spring
up.
vacation.
We're not at the end of the year.
No, but we
have
won't be back
academic
until-
field day this Friday. The high school does, so that's very exciting. My classes are, so first I have game night, and then I have monster cookie, which is like decorating cakes and cookies, and then it was a coloring class, so it's just kind of relaxing and coloring. It's very exciting.
But there is one class on how to do the New York Times crossword puzzle, right?
Are you leading
There
that
was
yet?
40. There's 42 classes. I think.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
whole range. It was
I have.
really
There's
interesting.
one.
How to crochet marine animals.
How to crochet marine
Marine
biology.
animals? There's a niche.
My daughter's taking that one. I'll let you know.
Okay. There's a fix
Marine
it,
mammals.
which is how to fix holes in walls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was how to adult. There was
What?
That's
It's
for their
called How to
upcoming
Adult.
college career.
How to adults?
how to adult.
Who's doing that one?
I don't know. You don't know who the teachers are because they want you to sign up based
Yeah.
on your interests, not
Not
based
your
on the teachers.
There's a media class that looks at Flight of the Conchords. I won't
Yes.
say who teaches it, but it should be very good.
All right, well, I hope it goes off really well. Okay, so we don't have anything under old business. We have some policies
Policies. Yes, we
under
do.
new. So these are first reads.
First reads, and I think last meeting I put off talking about what we had discussed in our policy committee meeting because I knew that these were going to be coming up. So just to very quickly explain why these things are on here, we have policy 0110, which is on sexual harassment, and basically we added some language to make it clear that the policy covers both what's called quid pro quo harassment as well as hostile school environment harassment. And the language in here sort of explains what those are. Before, the policy was a little bit vague and it wasn't clear that it covered both. It also removed references to a regulation that doesn't actually exist. The next one that we revised was 2110, which was the Board of Ed powers and duties, and we had sent that one off to our attorney. Actually, the sexual harassment one we had also had reviewed by the attorney, and after we got the feedback, we did that. The 2110 Board of Ed authority, The old policy kind of listed certain items. It was just kind of a small subset of what the board's actual responsibilities and authority is, and so the attorney had recommended us just replacing it sort of entirely with a different language. So we chose to do that. So what you're seeing is the new language for that policy. School-sponsored student expression was also one we asked the board to review. And the only thing we really changed in there is there's a paragraph at the end about due process, where if a student wants to, if the student wants to put something in a school publication and the inclusion of that is denied based on this policy, there's sort of a process for appealing that. And there were some specific time frames in the appeal process that we chose the language to be a little more generous or general, saying sort of rather than specifically 2 school days to a reasonable time frame. And you'll see in the draft of the policy where we did that, just to make it a little more flexible. And then the other, that's 1, 2, 3, and the other one, use of surveillance cameras in the school district, and that one is on my on this computer is not printing out properly, so I can't actually see what we changed.
Which one is it?
The 8120.1. Oh, good, you have a real computer. Yeah, because that's Word. There's no Word on here, so
okay.
Scroll down and let's see if we've changed anything. Oh, why does that not show what we changed?
What is that?
This
8120.
the surveillance.
Was that like storage of the discs?
Yeah.
That's right. That's what it was. It was just the language talking about storing was talking about old, outdated technology. So we made more generic references so that every time the technology changes, we don't have to update it. Thank you. And then, so those are the 4 that are out there for first read. So everyone can read them, and if you have questions, let us know on the committee. And then the other 2, there were 2 policies that we recommended just out and out removing from the policy manual. One was policy 2400, the policy manual policy, which basically
Circular.
yes, it was like
and she'll have 3 readings.
And then it's not even a book anymore, it's online, so it's not even a manual.
basically a
It's our
policy
policies,
saying, yes, that it's our policy to have a policy manual, and we just,
which we don't have.
which we just felt that was an unnecessary policy. And and same with the other one, that it was on school district organization, and it really didn't say anything, and we felt that a policy that doesn't say anything is better off not existing.
We were going to create a policy that said if a policy doesn't say anything.
Yes, we
There
could
you
do
go.
that, Lisa, that would be lovely. So in any case, the 2 that we're recommending removing, we can vote on tonight and just go ahead and remove them if we'd like to. And the other ones that are up there for the first read, we can vote on next. Since we have another meeting next week, we can vote on them.
You want to vote tonight to remove, or if you have a chance, if you haven't had a chance, just go and take a look at them.
Yeah, because
We'll do all the motions
could do
next
that.
week.
and everyone should look at 2400 about the policy to have policies, because, it's just amusing, and we could all use a good laugh.
That really says a lot. This is where we're getting our laughs from.
Well, you got to get them where you can, Lisa. So, because after next week, when we vote to remove it, you won't be able to look at it anymore. So.
All right, then. So we'll vote on policies next week. We are up to the second public comment. If either of you would like to say something? No? Okay. Any comments from the Board of Ed?
I have a comment. I just want to thank Maureen and Roy for all their hard work on putting together an excellent budget.
Thank you.
Yes, really appreciate it. And thank you for getting all the copies out, too.
now that you've done the presentation, this will, did it go up?
It's not, the link's online.
No,
Yeah.
it's up. It's up, yeah.
Okay, so,
So that's the presentation, and then the budget book is...
Budget book's up as well.
Budget book's up, and I think we
The
have,
right link?
I gave Janine the presentation already to put up.
Yeah, it actually went up, like, we got
Yeah.
we got the book online after,
Right.
we scanned it. And it's on the homepage, it's attached to the board docs, and then it's also on the business office page.
And fourth page under budget information.
Right one, good.
all right then.
I have one other comment, which
okay.
is that I think it was the year before Royce started, that we first put money in the budget for a consultant for the middle school to figure out, what to do there to sort of improve
the
things.
experience, yeah.
And I just think that it says really wonderful things about your leadership and just the work in the district and in the middle school, that, the process of sort of deciding to do that, having that sort of chunk of money in the budget for 5 years, and to have the ongoing work done with the consultant and the support for the teachers, and getting to the point that they can really take the training wheels off and run with it on their own, and that it's really now sort of, they own it at this point. I just think it says wonderful things about the way, we're working in this district, and you in particular, and Gail and the middle school, and I'm just really excited, because I know when we first put that money in the budget, we all really felt that there was some, there was a lot of room for growth and improvement, and, and I think the teachers, the administrators in the middle school are really happy with the direction, and I think, that to me is, it's sort of like having children, you're successful when they can go off on their own, and the fact that you're able to reduce that money, kind of says that they can now stand on their own with that, so.
Thank you.
All right, we will see you next week.